Facebook, and YouTube. So thank you for joining us. And I think this will be recorded. We'll share this in the future. You'll have access to this if you can't watch it live. Thank you for the time. We're excited to talk about intake calls for recruiting and hiring, also known as kickoff calls. But we would say these are probably the most important conversations your recruiters are having for the recruiting process, right? This is an opportunity to go beyond job descriptions to unlock and discover what the true business needs are, why the role's open, what's exciting about the position, right? Those are all these things that many times are not on the job description, right? But that's the recruiter's job. So today we'll be talking about, intake calls have not evolved, right? We're still typically having a phone call or now a video call with the hiring manager. And I'd have you think about what are the actual inputs and outputs of these intake calls that we have every day. So, Andy, why don't we do quick introductions and then we'll dive into the future of intake calls?
Yeah, sure, Nick. I'll start. I'll introduce myself. Hi, I'm Andy Riaboken. I'm a solutions architect with Honeit Software. I have 3 decades of professional services experience that span from systems engineering to recruiting. From systems engineering, I'm talking about implementing wide area networks and NetWare and Lotus Notes for Price Waterhouse. In terms of my recruiting career, I've worked for some of the most demanding managers, such as ex-Korn Ferry partners that are from West Point and have an MBA and a JD, to big companies like Robert Half. At those companies, at Robert Half, I completed a 14-week training program. I was also the #1 recruiter out of 14,000 technical recruiters back in 2010. So today, what we're going to do is just do a deep dive on what's important. I'm hoping that I can share some of my life experience that I've had with these intake calls and how important they are and how costly they are if you do not do them correctly. So I'm excited to kick this off, and I hope all you folks get as much out of this as I can give you. And with that, back to you, Nick. I'll let you introduce yourself and talk about Hone It.
Awesome. My name is Nick Livingston, one of the co-founders and CEO of Honeit. Honeit is the ultimate communication stack for data-driven recruiters. We help companies make better decisions faster by using interview data for instant collaboration and clear communication. And today we're going to talk about how that frames to the intake calls that we have every day with clients and hiring teams. My background is technical recruiting turned in-house recruiting. I was a manager and then director at MTV Networks Viacom in New York. Had a great run there, and then moved to the Bay Area to work closer to technology and worked at early stage technology companies, helped them kind of build out the TA functions, go through IPOs, while attending business school in the evenings. And that's where the idea of Honeit came, is how do recruiters turn all of these great conversations we have every day into data and insights to help make better decisions faster. So let's talk about the intake call, Andy. Why are intake calls important, and why are they challenging?
Well, I'll kick it off. Why they're important to me, Nick? It's like the first day of school. It's like your first day at college class. Your college class typically lasts about 3 months. You better go to the first day of class to understand exactly what the professor is expecting from you as a 3 month deliverable after a 3 month deliverable. And again, it's all these precious pieces of information that's what's important about the role. Everything that's not in the job description. That's our job as recruiters. And again, at that first intake call, to be able to extract as many things we can from the hiring authority, the stakeholders, everyone for which are responsible for the success of this role, right? And be able to capture that information and do more than just hold it in my hand. I should be able to share the information. What we're going to talk about mostly today is collaboration and instant collaboration once we have the data set. And again, we'll talk a lot about interview data. Intake calls are interview data too, right? That's the most important call that you're going to make. You're going to interview the hiring manager, and you're going to take everything that's important from that discussion and share it with internal stakeholders and external stakeholders with candidates. I'll let you expound on that a little bit more, Nick.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to this idea that, recruiters, we don't get our insights from, say, the job description or for the resume, right? Those are created by someone else in most cases and have been copied and pasted and repurposed, right? They're not specific to this need, this availability, this team, this department, this company, right? They've been copied and pasted. So how can we rely on a job description to be the mechanism in which a hiring and recruiting team and all the various personalities involved are aligned and on the same page with what a hiring manager needs and what how this impacts the business. So I think fundamentally just relying on a job description is not sufficient, right? And that's where these intake calls are important, as Andy mentioned, to uncover the true business need. Why is this job? How is this job going to impact the business? What's the ROI on this role? What gaps is it filling? Similarly, clear and understanding of how this role works with all of the other surrounding teams and colleagues, right? So understanding those team mechanics is very important to be able to articulate and to pitch and to explain this opportunity downstream. Okay.
And Nick, if I could just kind of support you again on what are the challenges of taking a good intake call? Well, number one, it's doing one intake call, doing it really well, and getting all the information that you can from it. The challenge is, again, back when I was doing executive search or when I'm working internally, was number one, the how much it would cost to kick these intake calls off, because I'd have typically when we did intake calls for executive search in a boutique and we're charging $75,000, $100,000 a placement, it was typically at least 3 of us were sitting on the phone, right? We had the president CEO because we're sure not going to blow a $100,000 fee. We had the account executive, the account manager, managing director was typically me. And I would have a sourcer that would sit with me. So I've got those 3 people sitting for about an hour listening and scribbling to these intake calls. So again, they're super costly when you start thinking about how many people need to get on those calls. And the other real problem is if you add to your team or you have to go to an external company or an external search firm and then present what the job description is or what the intake call is, you may have to call that hiring manager again. All right. And that hiring manager is not going to be pleased to explain the role to you again because you have to explain it to your sourcer or the new person that's on the team, or we decided to put it out to search. Right. So there's challenges here that are costly. It's the logistics are tough. And two, there's a better way of doing it. So I think what we're going to kind of focus on today is the better way of doing what we're already doing. I'll
Yeah,
give it
Andy,
back
I
to you, Nick.
love that. I mean, you talk about the team from the agent external recruiter that's involved, but just think about all the people involved in the hiring process. You got the hiring manager, you got the recruiter, you may have an internal sourcer, you have the 3, 4 people that Andy mentioned externally. You've got the interview stakeholders, the panelists that are going to be talking to these folks candidates downstream. You've got the VP of the department, you've got the CEO signing offers. Hiring is a team sport. So again, going back to clear communication and instant collaboration across all of these stakeholders, how do we remove the he said she said from this process to make sure everybody understands the role directly from the source without all having to even be on that intake call? So with that said, maybe we dive in a little bit to kind of talk about the future of intake calls and what they could look like when you start to think of these conversations as data. What can we do with this intake call data? So let me share my screen real quick, and we're just going to show you a couple of workflows. Let's put our recruiter hats on and let me schedule a call with a hiring manager. So it's as simple as clicking schedule a call, typing in, the hiring manager. In this case, we'll use a fictitious hiring manager, Brett Johnson. Um, they're available to talk tomorrow at 10:45 Mountain Time, right? And we want to do a 45-minute call. We're going to go deep, and let's make this a video call. Okay, so when I schedule a call with Brett Johnson, the hiring manager is going to get their calendar invite and the reminder emails and all of that stuff to know where to show up on that for that video call. And here I can see it's uploaded and available as an upcoming call, right? And so what I can do here is, let's say last minute I wanted to add a colleague, right? This is where I'm going to loop in Andy, have him join the call. But again, the beauty of when you start to think about intake calls as data is only one person needs to facilitate this intake call. And what that one person can do is ask really great, thorough questions using an intake call guide. So here I'm going to select this intake call guide and I'll show you what it is. But imagine your company, your firm, having a structured intake call guide that account managers would use or recruiting leads would use when they're talking to hiring managers about the job, right? And this goes beyond what the job title is. This is, tell me about your role in the company, right? Why is this role important to the business? What's most exciting about this opportunity? What are the key skills? What's the team like, right? Um, what core value for your company core value is most important to this particular role and why, right? What's the work policy for this particular role? What's the interview process for this why? And most interesting is what questions, hiring manager, would you like our team to be asking candidates on the first call? Okay. So this is a call guide that can be easily customized for your organization to ensure everyone involved in the hiring and recruiting process is fully clear on what the hiring manager is looking for.
Yeah, Nick, and if while you're kind of setting up the next piece, I know some of the audience is sitting there listening to themselves saying, "We doing that right now. We're doing that all the time. We've got such a sophisticated intake call process. You can't believe how we do this." Well, my question is whether if it's a Zoom call, for example, or it's just a phone call, for example. What are your outputs? Right? We all know what the inputs in. We've been asking, hiring managers why we want to hire people for years, right? Since the functions existed. But the question is, what has changed with the output of that conversation? And what we're saying is, let's deliver more value into the work we're already doing. For agencies, let's monetize more our conversations, but let's add value. And the value is number one, we're the ones trained on asking the good questions, right? We're the ones trained on this. What we should be able to do is execute a great intake call and then what? Collaborate, share. This is what we're missing. This is why they do panel interviews, right? This is why we'll do a debrief. This is why I'll have to write it up. This is why if I just took my intake call and I'm sitting over my pod of recruiters, I just scream what they're looking for. We have to do better than that. And the suggestion is now that we have a tool like Hone It where we can easily collect and consume this type of interview data, intake call data, we just want to get more value out of the work that we're already doing. Go ahead, Nick.
So we scheduled the call with Brett. Fast forward, we have that great 40-minute video call or phone call with the hiring manager to learn about the role and ask all those great questions. When we end our call, this is the intake call data we now have, right? Brett was the hiring manager. These were the key skills that we talked about during the call, right? The skills, the competencies, the acronyms, the project management fund philosophies that are important for this particular role. We've got the full call recorded so we can rewind the tape. What did they say about that thing, right? We've got the full call transcribed and indexed and tagged so we can search the transcript to find that thing that the hiring manager said about that thing, right? And what's most exciting is when your team asks a hiring manager a really great question about why the job is open, the key skills, what company value is important for this role. All of those answers are automatically parsed out, captured, and even transcribed, right? This is the data from the call you just had. Okay. So let's stop and think about that. This is no longer someone kind of frantically typing notes or scribbling, what the hiring manager is saying for that to be lost and gone forever. No, that call is captured. You can search it. You can rewind the tape. And most interesting is you can share this information with other stakeholders for instant collaboration. And let's show you how that works. So after an intake call, we can click create share link. And we're not sharing the entire 45-minute call. Nobody would want to listen to the entire call or read a 60-page transcript, right? But what we can do is we can create a branded job preview link. Okay. Select just a few of those highlights that are most interesting to this
Open
role.
one.
You can include the hiring manager's name or not. And if you have a job description, great, include that. And in 10 seconds, create a branded job preview link. This is now how a hiring team and a recruiting team can share insights from that intake call with zero misinterpretation, misinformation, miscommunication to all of the other people involved.
All right. So all we're doing is getting more value out of the work that we've already created, already doing. So again, think about this. When we share it internally, when we share it with our sources, when we share it with our other recruiters, when we share it with the coordinators, what are we doing? We're educating them on the role, and I'm not no longer repeating myself. You didn't understand the role? Listen to it again. Okay, that's okay to listen to it again. You're not taking up any more time, but you're getting up to speed and you're being able to work more independently. And now you're going to be able to contribute more to the process. And all we're doing is collaborating from the source. It's no longer this telephone game of, I heard it this way, they heard it that way, let me explain it again. All this noise that goes away, if we just do it right the first time, look at the value we can get out of it when when we begin to collaborate like that. Go ahead, Nick.
So, what can we do with this intake called data? Well, here's an example that could easily be shared internally. You could Slack this to the team, right, for instant collaboration. You could send it to the sourcer. They can now go to market, right, with actual hiring manager insights about this role. And let's see how that would work. So, I could copy this link, go to LinkedIn, right? And as I'm reaching out to candidates, I can say, hey, here's the role I mentioned. What do you think? Here's a chance to meet the hiring manager and hear about the role directly from the source. Okay. So we can use this data to stand out to passive candidates and help them opt in to that communication style of the hiring manager.
And Nick, if long as I have you here, notice what Nick is doing also is we're changing the candidate experience. How are we doing that? One, we're giving them the most important information they need to whether they need to move forward in the process. What's the job? Who's my boss? Okay. I always say fail fast, right? I don't want to be 2 weeks invested, 2 months invested in the candidate to have them withdraw or drop out or not show up to work, right? If they don't like what they hear, I don't want to interview them and we don't need to involve them in the process. I want my recruiters working on the best viable candidates that are available for this job today. And this is how we do it, right? Candidates know when they hear it. That sounds like a boring work environment. That's just not my jam, right? This is what I'm looking for, right? And they know it when they hear it. So again, what this does is allow, you know, candidates that aren't a fit to withdraw early in the process. No, I don't like what I hear. Or two, hey, he moved me, right?
Mhm.
I want to work for that guy. My values align with the organization because I'm hearing it, right? And it's not no longer this. Everything is hinged on recruiter trust. Well, okay, we have a lot of experienced recruiters out there that are trusted advisors. I got that part. But again, here's the great part is be able to present a little bit of data. And again, what do we get to do when we get a little bit of data? Share it. Go ahead, Nick.
Awesome. So again, those insights that a recruiter unlocks during the call can now easily be captured, searched, and communicated with others. These are things that again are not on the job description, but they're interesting to candidates, right? It's the information and the insight that a candidate would want to know before they schedule a call with a recruiter, right? And if they like what they hear, the right people will book calls with the recruiter in one click. Okay. Well, let's look at what else we can do here. So, if I wanted to edit this link, and let's say maybe I wanted to post this a bit more broadly, I didn't want to just use it for targeted sourcing to specific candidates, but I wanted to cast a bit of a wide net. Well, in this case, I could keep the job description. That's great, but I could also instead of booking a call with the recruiter immediately, we could customize this link and say apply here, right? And point to the job description URL, right? And that's going to get, you can now advertise this a bit more broadly, cast a wider net without fear of a bunch of unqualified people booking your recruiters. So we could point to a URL with the job description, and create another link that we can now broadcast a bit more widely. How does that work? Well, now we can post this on LinkedIn, right? We can share this broadly that we're hiring 10 SDRs in North America, right? And it's going to be this branded experience that the candidates can quickly opt into.
And Nick, while we're on that topic, notice this is the time to source, right? We always talk about what is the end-to-end recruiting cycle or hiring cycle. In our view, it starts after we've been able to publish that intake call. Now it's time zero. Now I can put it in my ATS or my email systems and blast it out. I can put it up on every social link, and now the floodgates start coming out. So this is how we source more quickly from a good intake call. And again, we want to share these items. And notice what Nick has there. We can either show off the hiring manager, right? Or we again understand this could be a panel. This could be meet the founders too. We could do several of them like that. But this is what else we can do. Again, we just add more value and add a tool like Hone It to share just the highlights of the information that are needed. No one wants to read a 45-minute transcript, right? Those days are gone. What all we want to do is show the highlights.
And if you have great A players and A plus hiring managers, showcase your A players to attract more A players. We know that that's age old saying, right? But if we hide hiring managers behind three steps, we're not going to attract the best and brightest, right? If you've got incredible diverse hiring managers, showcase diverse hiring managers to attract diverse candidates, right? So these can be very strategically used, and you have complete control over what you choose to share or not share internally with hiring teams or externally with the market and with candidates. I think the last thing we hear often is that maybe if you're an external recruiter, you don't have a job description, right? And if that's the case, then don't worry. You can select a few of those great insights from the kickoff call and automatically generate a summary. Right? This is where we're now using Hone It interview data to automatically summarize conversations. So in this case, the write up goes away. And now an account manager or a recruiter can share a quick, cohesive, comprehensive summary of the role instantly with stakeholders and coworkers, right? So even if you don't have a job description, you can share value and insight with other people.
Yep, it happens all the time. Again, I was working with a recruiter yesterday. I just get a rec. What do I do with it? I have to make something happen from it. And this is another great way of getting to market quickly. Go ahead, Nick.
Excellent. The other thing we can do is, when you get, what can we do with the intake called data? We can actually embed Hone It highlights into your job descriptions, right? Here's an example job description, but notice at the top, we've embedded a couple of those insights about the role, right? We still got the job description, and we've still got, the perks and the benefits, but we're also giving candidates what they want: transparency, trust, a peek behind the curtain, right? Companies are always struggling to figure out how do we create, micro recruiting content. We've all got the career video on the career page, right? But creating department specific, team specific, or rec specific content can be very challenging. Yet, here we have this intake call that's a best practice, a part of every good recruiter's workflow. We can turn that intake call into content used for strategic candidate marketing, employment branding at the micro or team level.
Yeah, we always hear these things, Nick, about how do I improve my brand, my employer brand, my micro branding. Here's really a simple way of doing it, right? And again, recognize nothing's changed. We're not sending in a film crew. All we're having is a conversation, and that conversation is data. And I think the audience should recognize the common theme here is everyone we need to, if you're in the recruiting business, you need an interview data strategy. If you're not capturing these conversations, you're missing out on recruiting gold. All right. Every company out there has to have a interview data strategy because there's so much more information. And again, this is a great way to be able to collect and consume the most important conversation you have about the job is that hiring manager intake call.
Exactly. And I think it comes back to just take a step back and look at the inputs and the outputs of the calls we have every day as recruiters. Those phone screens, what questions are we asking? What is the output after a phone screen? If it's not data, you're going to be left in the dust because recruiters who share data and evidence and insights are going to beat recruiters who share opinions and gut feelings and you should just talk to this guy, trust me, right? Same with an intake call, right? We've put in the time, we've had a great intake call, we've learned all this amazing insight about a particular role and why it's important. Well, what is the output of that call? If it's one recruiter's opinion and some scribbled notes and their interpretation of what a hiring manager told them about a thing that's highly complex and the first role of its kind, there's going to be there won't be clear communication across the recruiting and hiring team. So here's the challenge for everyone. Think about that next intake call you have and think about the output, right? And if it's not data, we're missing a real opportunity to make higher quality hiring decisions, attract the right candidates, and streamline the process.
Nick, that's a really great summary. All you folks who are interested in Hone It, notice up in the corner we have a QR code. You're welcome to start off a free trial with us. Nick and Andy come with the software. We are happy to explain this in detail, train up your teams, learn how important these intake calls are, and how important they are to the success of your business going forward. You're going to attract quality candidates and you're going to get quality hires that are going to stick, and it's going to improve your personal brand and your personal reputation. So thanks again for everyone joining us. Nick and I do these talks about once every 2 weeks, and we're happy that you're here to share it with us today.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, everybody. My email is nick@honeit.com, andy@honeit.com. Feel free to reach out and we can continue the conversation. Have a great rest of your day.